Okay, so I think we can make a start. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. So my name is Kieran Stevens, and on behalf of Williams Medical, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank and welcome everyone to this webinar on managing me in an age of us. So this webinar is the second in our new practice support series and is presented in partnership with the Institute of Health and Social Care Management. We are delighted to welcome Dr. Claire Mould from Curve Strategic today. So many thanks for joining us, Claire. I'm sure you'll introduce yourself formally in a sec. And just a couple of bits in terms of housekeeping before we make a start. So this webinar is scheduled for 1 hour. In terms of questions, we'd like to invite your comments and questions throughout the session. So if you do have a question, please use the chat function, which some of you have already used, and it should just be at the top of your screen. This session will be recorded and will be available on our platforms shortly after the session. And we'll also include some useful resources in our post-event communications. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Claire to start the session.
Thank you very much, Kieran. That's really kind of you, and welcome everybody. I'm absolutely thrilled to be invited to do this session. As Kieran said, that my name is Claire Mould and I'm from Curve Strategic, but I work very, very closely with the Institute of Health and Social Care Management, and I want to extend my thanks to Kieran, because typically I ran through this morning, everything was fine, and then I've come up now and I've got a little bit of a glitch. So Kieran's very kindly offered, so he's going to be doing my slides for me as we go. So bless you, Kieran, for that. As Kieran said, this session is going to be an hour. What I'm going to do is canter through some really, really detailed aspects of personal stress management. But the reason being for that is so you can take away some really salient points. It looks as if there are a lot of slides. You will get these to take away. I wanted to do a lot of slides because then you've got the information there, but they're quite light touch, and I will be talking through all of them. The reason I put so many together is so you have a real pack to go away. My experience of running sessions like this, it's really useful. So you can sit back and really listen, internalize what's being said. As Kieran said, if you have any questions, please just put them in the chat, and we will respond to them. I will respond to them as we go through, or we'll pick them up at the end. So it isn't a problem at all. So let's get started then. First of all, let's detail exactly what I'm going to cover in the next 50 minutes or so. So I'm going to define what we mean by personal stress. People use the word stress so loosely in this day and age that it's really important. I know from your backgrounds that you'll probably have a more broader understanding anyway, but I do get slightly frustrated. That's only because my PhD is in neurology, and specifically the links between emotional intelligence and cognitive intelligence, and it's often overused, and it almost becomes diluted. So let's start with a definition of what personal stress is. Then I'll be going through some techniques for reducing personal stress, and then we'll be looking at symptoms of burnout, and then what are we going to do about this? Understanding those chemicals in your body. And it's essential to understand the chemicals in your body that are being emitted, because that's our key to breaking the cycle. So we don't end up with spirals of negativity leading one way or another way, that we can actually begin to break those spirals. And then the final sections will be how to make the most of this knowledge. A lot of what I'm going to say, I am so confident that you will turn around and go, yeah, well, that's just common sense. But unfortunately, in my line of work, I see that people don't always implement common sense. They don't always act on the knowledge that they've got. And then we'll finish with fostering greater resilience, because that's our key armor in helping us to prevent stress and reduce it and mitigate in the future. And then just identifying the 5 core simple ways to increase well-being. Okay, let's get going. So definition of personal stress, it refers to the physical, mental or emotional strain or tension that a person perceives the demands of a situation to exceed their personal ability to cope. And that tension is really important, because often people say, oh, I'm finding this really, really stressful. Whereas that's very different to stress. It's that tension between what your demands are to your ability to cope. You can feel pressured. You can feel as if you've got an awful lot on your plate and there's an awful lot going on and it's busy. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are stressed. As we will see as we go through this session, it could lead to stress, but that isn't what stress is. It's that physical, mental or emotional strain or tension that exceeds your personal ability. Stress is a very personal thing. What somebody may find stressful isn't what somebody else will find causes them to feel stress. It's the response we have when faced with pressures, challenges or threats that we can feel overwhelming. Thank you, Kieran. So it can motivate people sometimes to take action or improve performance. So you can suddenly think, actually, I'm beginning to feel overwhelmed with this. I need to do something about it. I was listening to a podcast this morning when I was out on a run, which is one of my coping strategies to mitigate the build-up of stress. And somebody was saying about, actually, now I know the symptoms, I find it I can notate them, and I think actually I can do something about that. So it can motivate me to take action or actually improve performance, because I think, no, hold on a minute, this isn't an effective way of working. We often, in health and social care, we find ourselves firefighting all of the time and get it very, very stressful as we're doing, whereas actually just really being in tune with that and go, hold on, this isn't the most effective way of working. I'm feeling drawn down. I'm energized. I've got that adrenaline that's coming through beginning to feel stress, but actually I can use it positively. And we'll come back to that of how actually being resilient, how we can draw on those feelings. However, if we don't do anything about it, it's that prolonged or excessive stress. It can have negative effects on both our mental and our physical health. That's why it's really important to note if it's something that we can tune into and develop and motivate us. But if it is, we just carry on day after day. So you have a very, very busy week, but then that turns into a busy month, a busy year, then that actually can lead to the negative effects. And by the time we've got there, it's harder for us to come back from those positions. Thank you, Kieran. It's not the same as a mental health disorder, but it can lead to mental health problems if it's not managed. And this is a key thing that we'll see. This is what I'm talking about with the spirals. When we identify it, we can use that for good and draw on that energy, draw on those chemicals that are emitted and draw on that adrenaline. But actually, if we don't, it can lead to far more serious inherent things that can really build up and then actually embed and lead to things like PTSD and such, that if we just ignore it, it is essential that we are aware of the build-up and we do something about it, otherwise it will lead to far more serious outcomes. So we need to understand what it is so we can identify how it affects us, and so we can identify then how to respond to it, because it's all very well we say we need to do something about it, but let's have a look at some of what stress is so we can really identify how that affects us. Thank you, Kieran. So one of the things that can cause immediate stress is a triggering event. So this could be suddenly an external work deadline, financial pressure, or internal feeling unsure or worried about one's ability. And I'll give you a personal example of something that made me suddenly feel stressed. Was I was working as a CEO of a charity, and we had a board report, and I'd been working a lot of weekends, had board reports to do because we had a board meeting that fell just after Easter. And what I'd been working towards was thinking, okay, what I'm going to do, I've had all of these weekends where I've been working, I'm going to get all my board reports done, and then I just need to take some time. I need to take the Easter weekend to really regroup, to take some time to breathe, to go for a walk, have some fresh air, and get away from my desk. And then I'll be going in stronger for the board meeting. So I'd worked really hard. And then on the Thursday before, Maunday Thursday before Good Friday, I got a call from my chair who suddenly said, I know that I've said that your board report was fine, but could you just add this, this, and this? And actually, I think it'd be really useful to have this additional summary paper for some of the board members, and just suddenly added loads. And that suddenly triggered me. Suddenly I thought, no, actually, I realised how much I'd been looking forward to that weekend, and I was depending on that weekend. And it suddenly triggered me, and I felt immediately sweat down the back of my neck. I thought that it was something that I could easily do, but because I was so tired, because I literally, it got to 6 o'clock on that Thursday, I thought, this is what I need now to regroup. And then suddenly I got a phone call from my chair and said that. And so I ended up then working through the night on this because I thought, I've just got to do it. And I couldn't find my way out of it. But it was that trigger event that made me feel stressed. So suddenly something can happen, getting that additional work deadline or a financial pressure. So something can suddenly trigger us, or we could just suddenly feel overwhelmed by something. We could feel, oh, actually, I've lost my voice. Actually, Laura, could you do this presentation for me? And you don't like doing presentations, and suddenly something happens. Thank you, Kieran. The other one is actually a perceived threat when we believe that they don't have enough resources, time, or energy to meet a challenge. And the important thing there, this can be real or imagined. And often people, particularly if you are dealing with high pressure sort of firefighting issues, and then something else comes, you think, well, I haven't got the time for that, or I don't know how I'm going to take anything else on, or I'm absolutely exhausted and I'm not quite sure how to do. And you perceive that threat was actually, if you have a look, and this is what I say when I work with individuals, I say, well, hold on, look at your to-do list, look at your priorities, and make some red lines. What are absolutely non-negotiables, and what are things that if you don't do them today or this week, does it really matter? Because things keep getting added to our to-do list. We appreciate that. That's unfortunately our reality. But you can't just take everything on. It's your perception of, I'm being given everything. Everybody wants something here. Everyone, Heather suddenly's asking me for this, and somebody asking something else, and everything's coming in. And you become, whereas actually you could turn around to them and say, okay, I won't be able to get that back to you until next Friday. Is that okay? And they go, no, that's absolutely fine. I just wanted to let you know. Or if they say, well, this is a priority, we really need this, Claire, we really need this in, and say, okay, but that means I am going to have to put something else on hold. And so then this is a perceived threat. Like I say, it could be something that we're just assuming everybody wants something now, or it could be real, but we can manage that. We can manage our own stress levels. Thank you, Kieran. Now, this is where we start looking about how we respond. The mind or the body's response to the perceived challenge or threat. We start to get increased heart rate, sweating, tense muscles, or we get an emotional response. Like I said to you, when I suddenly got that, and it was it was that additional piece of work, I suddenly felt that sweat down the back of my neck. Or we get sort of mental signs like we start to get worried or irritable or difficulty concentrating. And I'll be completely honest with you, I can go through a day, a really, really long day of taking things out, taking things on, and thinking, right, do you know what? I'm managing this. And then when I finally get home, to the people that know and love me and actually haven't given me any stress at all, guess who I'm irritable with? Guess who then is, I just suddenly think, no, I just can't think about that now. I can't even, oh, what did you want for supper? I don't know. we take it out, and that's where we need to pick up those signs. Because the thing is, though, I don't know if people are familiar with the game Buckaroo. Some of you will be a childhood favourite. It's very much a generational thing. Those of you that's slightly younger might not be. But basically, the premise is this little bucking donkey, and it's got a saddle on, and you put things on it. And those of you that are seasoned players and will know how to play this when you are, when you're younger, will know you put the big items on first. So actually, the big things don't make it buck. The things that make it buck is suddenly that light little pickfork that you put on will make the donkey buck, and everything falls off. And it's often like that with us, that things build up. And if we don't notice these signs, everything will buck off. Thank you, Kieran. So the different types of stress. Sometimes it can just be acute stress, that's short-term stress in response to an immediate challenge, running late, reacting to a sudden argument. Okay, or it could be, I must admit, when I came on and I was so frustrated because this is the first time that I've met you all, that I've formally been working with Kieran and Laura, and I really made sure, and I did a dress rehearsal. I even hooked up with someone on Teams this morning and got everything working. And then when suddenly my my sharing didn't work, and then I suddenly sort of that acute stress, it was like, oh no, what? Fortunately, Kieran stepped in and said, well, it's all right, I can do the slides for you. An immediate response, the body soon recovers, situation over. The same as if you're running late or if you come out of an argument. That is known as acute stress. We all get periods of acute stress frequently. The body soon recovers once the situation is over. Next slide, please. Episodic acute stress is experience acute stress, but less frequently. So that might be that individuals who take on too many responsibilities or who constantly feel rushed may experience this type of stress. So you're going, so it's not an acute stress, but it's that drip, drip, drip that you're continually feeling. Now and again, you suddenly get, so it's nothing is triggers it per se, but it's just you're continually living, feeling rushed. And so you've got suddenly something will happen. It's so, for example, though, from a work-life balance perspective, if you've got to go and you've got caring responsibilities after work, and so you're always thinking, no, I always feel guilty because I've always got to dash off from this meeting, but I've then got to go and care for this person here, or I can't spend as much time doing this as I want to, so I've got there. So you're always feeling rushed. And then what will happen is you live in that state, but then occasionally something will happen, and it won't be like a huge thing like running late. It'll be something as part of your normal day. But it will be now and again, you'll get these little triggers that will come. And this is where I want you to start thinking whether you recognize this. We're moving on to the longer. No, sorry, Kieran, you read ahead of me and you did it perfectly. Now, this is where it comes more seriously, that this, if we don't pick up on those little points, it'll lead to chronic stress. This is the long-term stress when someone is facing ongoing pressures. And this is the bit that comes to become particularly harmful to our health because it keeps the body stress response active for long periods. So you get acute stress. Now and again, I'm running late. So normally everything's, breezy, easy. We're absolutely fine, but something happens and that's acute stress. Or episodic acute stress is that it's happening a little bit more frequently, and it becomes, we just live in that state. Now, what we have to be careful of is that we don't get used to that, because that can lead to a long-term stress. If you are continually anxious about something, if you're continually feeling rushed, you're continually feeling as if I can't cope, you're continually thinking, actually, we can't manage in this financial scenario, or professionally, I'm continually feeling, it's not now and again, it's where every time I come into work now, I begin to get clammy hands and I'm feeling really anxious. And this is when it is particularly harmful to us. Thank you, Kieran. Now, this is now moving on to the next bit. In order to introduce preventative or risk mitigation measures, we've got to be aware of what is causing this. So what we've done, we've identified the definitions of what stress is. we've identified what those different trigger points may look like. And now it's what's causing this. So we're going to have a look through what's causing that now. Thank you. So external causes, the most common ones, none of this, like I said, none of this is rocket science. This won't surprise you. It's major life changes, relationship difficulties, financial worries, workplace demands, or lack of support at work. I should imagine none of that surprises you. Again, internal causes, negative thinking, uncertainty, or fear of the unknown, excessive self-pressure to meet high expectations. Again, none of that should or would surprise you, I should think. But again, what I want you to start thinking about is, can you start to identify? Are you somebody that has more just internal causes? Do you putting excessive self-pressure on yourselves? That's one that I'm most common to. I put pressure on to meet high expectations because I set high expectations for myself. Or are you somebody that, no, actually, I'm okay, but it's then external pressures. I get more stressed about things I don't have any control over, the external things. Where do you put all a combination of both? Thank you, Kieran. And so the kind of signs that we will see with this are we start to get headaches, muscle tension, difficulty sleeping, and fatigue. Again, very, very obvious signs, but obvious signs to ignore. And also other things can be masked as those. You could say, well, actually, you know, there might be certain people, and I may or may not be speaking from a personal perspective, that are women of a certain age going through the menopause. We'll look at that and go, yeah, I'm feeling all of those things. I'm having difficulty sleeping, but you've got to be honest with yourself. Is it related to that, or is it related to something else? Again, if you've got a cold, you might have a headache or muscle tension, but this is why we needed to say about what those causes are or what the triggers, so you can analyze and think, no, I need to hold a mirror up to myself and be really, really honest about this. Thank you, Kieran. The emotional signs, we feel overwhelmed, agitated, anxious, changes in mood, irritability or sadness, low self-esteem or feeling undervalued. Are we experiencing those things on a regular basis? Are we continually feeling overwhelmed by things, agitated, anxious? It's interesting that I was doing some work elsewhere, and I came across a really, really good quote about, you know, the best way to judge your workplace is how you feel the night before you've got to go back into work, whether that's a Sunday night if you work a traditional Monday to Friday, or whether you've had a couple of days off your shift and you're going back, or when that's most exasperated is when you come back after a holiday. If you're feeling agitated or anxious or irritable or sad, then that shows that you are getting work-related stress. Or from a personal perspective, if there are certain people that when you spend time with them, you begin to feel more anxious or agitated, then they are key signs of stress, and you need to look at some preventative measures to look how you can address that. It's not a coincidence that you see the vast majority of jobs being advertised and people recruiting is in September after a holiday or after Christmas. So when people have had summer breaks and they've had time away to think, actually, do you know what, I just can't go back to that. Or over Christmas when people have had a break. What we want to be doing is not getting people to get to that state. We want to be rowing back and moving them to a position where they can say, right, how can I prevent this? And not get to the point of, actually, I just can't face going back. We don't want anybody to be sitting in that state of stress. Thank you, Kieran. So thinking then, the mental effects. Persistent worrying about everything, difficulty concentrating, forgetfulness or disorganization. And the trouble is, look at those signs, think about those things, how we've got to cope, whether it's in your personal or professional life. The reason I like about this is because actually it transcends amongst all of those. We all need to be effective on a personal, professional basis. It kind of helps us if we don't forget things or we're not disorganized, because that might upset your partners, family members, friends, if you're continually forgetting things, or you're disorganized. If you were meant to pay, if you're going on holiday or you're going for a night out and you were meant to pay a contribution towards it and you forgot because you got wrapped up with something else, and you suddenly realized in the draft, I know I haven't made my contribution, or I didn't do that. Or difficulty concentrating. If this is at work, if you're in a meeting, you know how that feels. Or if somebody's trying to talk to you, whether again person, professional, this then, those relationships, whether they're work relationships or personal relationships, they start to deteriorate. And when they do start to deteriorate, you feel even worse about it. And then you become even more stressed because you're worried about you're going to get, you know, have a performance management issue against you at work, or you're going to, you know, fall out with precious friends or family members. So it becomes, again, that cycle, that spiral of negativity. So we've got to start thinking about doing something about it. Thank you, Kieran. Okay, so personal experiences and resilience will affect how individuals experience stress. So this is the thing, it's all very well for me to say we've got to do something about it, but what we need to do about it has got to come from you, because it depends what your personal experience is. Again, going back to the buckaroo donkey, if you've had a lot of pressure put on top of you that's weighting down on you, then just the slightest little thing will make it really hard for you to cope. Whereas actually, if you haven't had those personal experiences, then you probably are able to cope far better with levels of stress. And again, it's your level of resilience. Some people are more resilient than others, and we're going to come on to that in a moment. But that'll impact how you experience stress. It is a personal thing. I cannot say it more than that. You can't turn and say, oh gosh, well, I'm surprised that caused that reaction from them. Or on yourself, think, why is it that I'm getting really, really upset by this, but nobody else is? You know, everybody is personal. The only way that we can really address it is knowing in ourselves where we stand and being really honest with ourselves, because we know what childhood traumas or experiences, or relationship traumas or experiences that we may have had, or work traumas or experiences. Only we know what those are and how that has impacted. Thank you, Kieran. So let's have a look at some of those things then. If we're starting to think, right, these are our triggers either way. Difficulty sleeping, we're going to just reiterate, because we've done that. Loss of appetite, overeating, one of the two. Increased heart rate or breathing, feeling distracted or on the edge. Okay, so this is when we're saying, well, I don't know, I'm monitoring. We're looking at all those things. You can see the common the occurrences that are really common themes that are coming through here. All of those things, be aware of them. Thank you, Kieran. The long-term effects. This is going to lead to increased risk of heart disease. These are really issue things. So we know this thing, but the long-term issues can lead to depression or anxiety disorders. They were the things that I said that actually complex mental health needs could come as a result of this. A weak immune function, development of unhealthy habits. Now, I'm going to take some time just to embed these, because an increased risk of heart disease, that's really important. This is proper serious stuff that we need to know, identify, because you hear of people having, you know, it's, oh, you know, you've been, oh, not a heart attack, you know, or how stressed are you? And it's a build-up. It's not very rarely just a current thing. It's a build-up. It's because you have that increased risk of heart disease that then will lead to having more significant experiences later on. Or you can have depression or anxiety disorders. And when you do feel depressed, then it's not something that you can just snap out of or do, you know, you've got to that point that can be really, really inherent. Doesn't mean there's no coming back from it, but it's far longer. It's far longer for us to come. We're talking about the equivalent of, it's like rather than just cutting your leg, you've broken your leg. You've got to really take time to come back. And sometimes you will never come back from it. So it's so important. Weak immune function. And this is really, really unfair. And what I'm about to share with you now isn't, it's a harsh story, but it's a true one, because it is unfair that somebody that I am supporting, I do mentoring and counselling, is somebody that is going back into work, having come through a cancer diagnosis, and that they came out of it. Thank God that they came through, and they've come through their full treatment, and they've rung the bell, and that's great. But as a result of that, they are very fragile around certain things, and that is leading to their weak immune function. Now, because they're so worried about going back into work because they financially need to get back into work, that they're also stressed with that. And they're already weakened immune system, and the fact that they are having to go into the workplace and really try to feel like they can prove themselves, because they need the money now, because they've had a period out of work and they really need to get back into the workplace. That is really impacting their immune system. And so as a result of that, they're having to take time off because of ill health, which makes them more stressed. And on we go. Development of unhealthy habits that we can suddenly think, these stress release that people think, whether that's, it could be drinking, smoking, eating, whatever it may be, these unhealthy habits, just as short fixes to make us feel better, to give us that release, but actually they're not addressing the issue, but then they become additional addiction issues that we have to deal with. Thank you, Kieran. So this is why we need to identify when we're getting to that burnout point that we need to do something about it. The four main factors are feeling exhausted or energy depletion. And again, you've got to be honest with yourself. I would put good money on the fact of, because knowing just roughly, because of the nature of the invite to this session, that all of you are exhausted after a day, after a shift, and you are energy depleted. I absolutely take that as a given, but it's that continual feeling of exhaustion or energy depletion. This one's important. Increased mental distance from one's daily reality. Everything becomes a bit foggy. You find things that you used to feel lucidly clear about, you feel more distant from. Feelings of negativism or cynicism. You start getting a bit snipey with people. You start feeling as if, resentful of other people or forgetful. And again, we all do. I was with somebody over the weekend who is planning to retire when they are 60. I'm going to be 56 this year, and I don't want to retire. I would love to carry on doing this. I'd love to be wheeled out and doing this for, have no want to retire early. However, because I was going through a really, really busy time, and it squeezed this person in amongst other work commitments this weekend, and this person was saying, oh, well, when I retire, do this, and retiring at 60 and everything. Even though she's a good friend, I started to feel a little bit, it's all right for you, all right for those people. Where did that come from? I'm not jealous of her. I don't want to retire when I'm 60. I love this friend dearly. She's worked incredibly hard. She deserves to retire. I'm glad that that's her life plan and she's really, really happy in it. But I felt myself feeling these cynical negativism towards it. And actually thought, no, that's not healthy. I need to start doing something about this. Reduced performance or efficacy. Again, and this is really annoying because we're wanting to do the very best, And ironically, through our want to do the very best, we end up not performing as well as we would want to. And that gets us even more annoyed because you know, no, I can do better than that. I can do better than this. And you feel it in yourself. You're thinking, but I'm not doing as well as possible. That's why, and I've done some work with university students, and I'm not a sports psychologist absolutely at all, but because of my interest in neurology, I have spent time, and it was interesting. I had the opportunity to go over to Portugal when Team GB, from the athletics perspective, the track guys from Team GB were over there doing a training camp, and it was really interesting. And I was there I should state, I wasn't working with them. I was literally there to learn about and do some research about the work that they do from a sports psychology perspective to really support people, because obviously from a perspective, it is head, heart, as well as your legs, your arms, or whatever bit you're using when you are representing Team GB on the track and field. And it was and I'm so thrilled about the importance that's being put on that psychological side of sports management. And the reason being is that it's lovely that it's happening because it makes people feel better. And I hate people feeling burnt out, but the reason they're doing it, to be frank, and they're investing in it, is because actually people get improved performance, not reduced in poor performance. Interesting that 63% of us state they've experienced at least one of these characteristics of burnout. I've just shared with you mine just this weekend. And again, I'm sure we can all relate and think, so we need to be mindful. We are living in a state where it is 63% of us are experiencing that. We need to have a look at ourselves. We need to think how we can move forward, because we're not going to optimize our potential if we live in this continuous state. Thank you, Kieran. So let's understand then what happens, what is going on. And this is the science bit, it's the neurological bit, the bit that I get really, really fascinated with. And to be honest with you, could spend a whole hour just talking about the neurological bits, but I'm just going to sort of zip through it just to show you some examples of how that can happen. So when someone faces stress, the stress hormones like adrenaline or cortisol are released. So it's the from the emitted the chemicals in the basal spine that they emit to the cognitive, the bit that deals with the well-being, emit to the cognitive bit of our spine. So they send the adrenaline there, going right back to the beginning when we said it could be used for positive reasons. If it's just a little bit of stress and suddenly you get this surge of adrenaline, like I said, that can help performance. That can really give you, which is why people sometimes turn around and say, oh no, I work best under pressure. Well, you don't work best under pressure if you're pressurized all the time, but maybe occasionally you do because of that adrenaline. Okay, but however, if it's a very serious, stressful thing, what we do then is our body reacts with a fight or flight response, because that is what we as humans have been led to believe, that that's how our survival is. We either go in and we fight this, or we flight, we run away from it. And this prepares us to either face the threat or escape it. And like I say, if this is happening on a normal basis, then that's absolutely fine, because we think, no, actually, I'm going to step away from this. This isn't for me. I'm going to make that cognitive decision and step away from it. Or yeah, actually, I'm going to step up now. Yeah, I'm a bit anxious about it, but do you know what? I'm going to really, really go for this, which is so often when people do presentations or they step out of their comfort zone afterwards, they have this rush of adrenaline because it's just, it all kind of comes over them. Now, the danger is if we get a really serious, if we call what's called neurologically hijacked, and our brain just suddenly reacts in a certain way. And what we need to do is have the resilience to know that that's going to act in our favor and not in a negative way. But this is what's going on in our brain, and we need to make sure that when we are neurologically hijacked, it is responding in a positive and not a negative way. Thank you, Kieran. So it's linking in with, so our amygdala, which is the bit, you know, in the spinal space here, and I'm going to show you a diagram in a second, is specialized for input and processing emotion. So that's then, if that's all working and we're firing on all cylinders and that's working well, and then the hippocampus is the long-term memory. So what you want is then when you get that sudden surge, it goes to a long-term memory, and that triggers a positive thing that you can respond to something, which is why we suddenly think, blimey, I don't know how I suddenly got the strength to do that. Or I suddenly saw a pram that was about to go into a canal and I sort of dashed over and grabbed and pulled them over. It's because suddenly, yeah, you neurologically hijacked, but you respond in a really positive, you respond in a positive way to the threat. You've chased it, whereas, or you've realized that, I don't know how we managed to get out of the building, but I managed to get myself and my family out of the building, or colleagues out. It's because that's why we do things like fire drills over and over again, because when everything is heightened, you just immediately go to that long-term memory. You have that surge of adrenaline into the input, you're neurologically hijacked, it goes straight to your long-term memory, you act in accordance to, which is why those drills that we think, oh gosh, you know, we're standing outside again in the pouring rain, yeah, we all know what to do. We've got to do them so they are embedded in our long-term memory. And it's the same we found, which is why we must live more in a constant state of looking after ourselves rather than not, because otherwise those chemicals block and we end up then, you know, seizing, and the outcome isn't great, because this isn't working in our favor. Our own bodies end up working against us. Thank you, Kieran. So as you can see, just a little bit picture there just for you to have, you know, so you can see where then we've got the amygdala there, the emotional part of the brain, and the hippocampus, and then the chemicals and everything that goes on, that they're both involved in memory and some of the emotional sort of short-term and long-term memory. And the ideal state is that the chemicals are being emitted and working together, so it works in that optimum state. The trouble is, if it breaks down and those chemicals stop being emitted, that's when it stops working, which is why, just very on a simple basis, if someone's asking you what the name of something is, oh, I can't think of it, and then suddenly when you're out for a walk or making supper or something, you think, ah, John, that was his name, it was John. Or sometimes if somebody says something to you and then you suddenly think of a really good response to what you could have said, you know, 5 minutes afterwards, you think, oh, why didn't I think that at the time when they made that snide remark? Why didn't I give that? That's why, because it's your brain, you know, it literally is your brain working, you know, firing on all cylinders. And that's why stress management is so important, because we want to keep our brain firing on all cylinders. Thank you, Kieran. So making the most of this knowledge, so we know all this stuff, and this is the bit, and all of that, like I say, goes, yeah, that I can relate to that. This is what we've got to say, is we've got to recognize when we are stressed. Think about what we've gone through today and think, actually, what are my stress points? All of them are different. What are my stress points? And I need to recognize what they are. But this will only be effective if you put that into practice through identifying coping strategies. Again, we're our own worst enemies. We know these things. We know that actually, yeah, just need a really, really good night's sleep. And then you still end up getting caught up with things. So you don't have a good night's sleep. Or, yeah, actually, I need to have a couple of days just not thinking about work. And then you end up working. We've got to put those coping strategies into action. Thank you, Kieran. So we need to think about physical activity. As I said to you earlier, my coping strategy is running. I am not a great runner. I use the term very loosely. I'm a plodder. The reason being is during COVID, and I was running I was overseeing the running of a large health and social care unit where we had patients that were in there and we had residents that were there. And it was, as you all know, 24/7, we were all on it. And I found the only bit of my 7-day week was I realized if I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, between 5 and 7, that was the only time I wasn't having late night safeguarding, saying that people had been admitted or discharged from hospital, or things hadn't happened in the morning between 5 and 7. So I'd get up and I'd go for a run. And I realized actually, because I was lying awake getting stressed, going for a run. That was the only time that I didn't have my phone on me. I couldn't talk to anyone because I'm not good enough runner. I couldn't breathe and think and do anything. I literally was just getting away from it all. Or relaxation techniques. There are some very simple relaxation techniques, and just take a moment, just to focus on something. A healthy lifestyle. We all know when we're stressed, we grab food as we go because you haven't got time to do things. So you grab something, it's not as nutritious. We need to invest in ourselves and say, actually, let's take some time to batch cook a little bit, or even, and I'm saying batch cook, I don't batch cook. It's because I'm just not what I can. What I do is buy a big bag of apples and pears and things. So at least when I'm grabbing something, I can crunch on it. And then it's taking the time or sharing feelings. Talk to people. I know people say, oh, problem shared is a problem halved, but talk to people. Time management or prioritizing your time. It's important to put yourself first, because otherwise your performance, so you are actually putting work or your family first, because you will perform better if you prioritize yourself in this. Thank you, Kieran. So again, stress is natural, but it doesn't have to take over you. Take regular breaks. Speak to someone if you feel overwhelmed. Make time to look after your own mental health. All really obvious things, but we don't do it enough. We don't do it. How many of us grab lunch at our desk? How many of you, is this your lunch break that you're doing this, then you're dashing straight back again? You know, if you can go for a wellbeing walk or do a walking meeting, try and make time to just get away from it, or step away from the pressures that you're under. Thank you, Kieran. So there are tools and resources. I'm going to canter through in the last 5 minutes here that you can have. So there's digital and non-digital. And that can include communities and support networks, but there are increasingly apps and things that we can use. If you don't mind putting on the next slide, Kieran, as you can see, so there's some self-education materials, and a lot of these we can download for free now. Wellbeing apps, or if they're not your thing, in-person, face-to-face therapy. That can either be paid for, or it could be just talking to someone, having a mentor. Like I say, I do mentoring for people. They don't call it therapy, but I do mentoring with other CEOs to support them, and because they have no one else to talk to. And it literally is, we spend an hour talking and unwinding and working through. Or you could just have a wellbeing app. Identify what the tools are for you, but make sure you have a tool, you have somebody to talk to, or you have something to listen to or to access. Thank you, Kieran. So resilience. So good stress management skills can foster greater resilience. So that's it. So at least if we put these in, it will help us become more resilient, because it won't build up. So we can become more resilient. Resilient doesn't eliminate stress or erase life's difficulties. It gives us the psychological strength to cope. Everybody receives points of stress in their lives, but it's the resilience that we can foster that gives us our ability to cope. Thank you, Kieran. So these are the kinds that we can be. Physical resilience. If you're feeling strong and healthy, that can help you, because you can feel quite, resilient, because you're not feeling really, really tired, and you're not feeling really hungry. Because if you're going into a meeting, you haven't had anything to eat, or you've not been hydrated, that what it's getting to is, if you feel physically resilient, that helps you. Mental resilience. So you can think, actually, yeah, I am feeling very strong cognitively. I'm understanding this. Yeah, I know, yeah, I'm anxious about this, but I know what I'm doing. I'm out of my comfort zone, but I know what I'm doing. Emotional resilience. So we can say, yeah, that really, really saddened me, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay. And I'm not talking about something comes on, we suddenly find ourselves crying at a daft advert or something, but it's actually that's fine. Social resilience. Actually, we can manage with people saying things to us, making a comment and thinking, do you know what? That's fine. I can live with that. So sometimes, like I say, when I go running, and it's hilarious, a middle-aged woman plodding along, sometimes people sort of run along beside me, young people generally, and they kind of think that they're having a little bit of fun, making fun of you, you know, and I could turn around and go, oh, that's it, I'm never going to run again because I feel really embarrassed by that. Whereas I just joke with them and I go, okay, I'm going to be doing this for the other hour. Do you want to stay with me for the whole time or do you want to stop now? You know, it's those bits. You know, you have to identify your resilience in each of those areas. Thank you, Kieran. So yes, some people are more naturally resilient, but it is a skill that can be strengthened if we put in all those tools that we thought about today. It is a skill that can be strengthened. Thank you, Kieran. So helpful strategies, seek support. No matter how resilient you may or may not be, we all need support. We need what Charles Handy calls our golden nuggets, our people that we can go to, that we can trust implicitly. And focus on what is within your control. Don't get caught up on all those things that are out of your control because you can't do anything about that. And again, I heard today, we found out that our niece is getting married in Tuscany next year. And my husband said, oh, but what about this? What about this? Where are we going to say? What are we going to say? Don't worry about it. That's out of our control. She will tell us the location. She will tell us the date. Why are you getting anxious about this now? Because there's nothing that we can do about it. We will learn from her where and when exactly in Tuscany she's getting married, and then we can respond. But at the moment, don't panic about it. Don't Google search the whole of Tuscany to find out whether we can or can't afford to stay there. Don't do that. You know, focus on what's within your control. It's the same within work. Don't worry about all this. Focus on what you can focus on and manage your stress. Be honest. And then the final slides to give us then those 5 minutes at the end. And I got this from the NHS because actually it's true and it works. And I could go on and whole sessions on wellbeing. But actually connect with people. Don't be isolated. Talk to someone. Connect. Find like-minded souls. Find someone you can trust. Be active. And that can be someone that can just literally, you could just walk around the kitchen table 3 times around your desk. Take notice. Don't suddenly find yourself in this spiral. Be alert to how you're feeling and keep learning about what you're doing. Active minds and actually give. Final one that I'm going to say today for your personal stress, actually, that feeling of supporting somebody else, giving someone else, leaves us with a huge emotional well-being. It really helps us. So thank you very much, Kieran, and thank you all. I know that it has been a real canter through, but thank you so much, everybody, for your time. I'll have a quick chat if there's anything in there, or if anybody wants to, say anything. Excuse me, glasses are.
Yeah, so thank you, Claire. I'm sure everyone on the webinar will agree. A really informative and thought-provoking session. Yeah, lots of great tips and some really good examples there. So yeah, we do have some time for questions. So there's nothing submitted in the chat yet. But if you do have a question, please use this time to enter it in the chat box and we'll get through as many as time allows. In the meantime, I just want to confirm that we will be delivering more education throughout the year. So please keep an eye out on our social media and webinar registration page for future events. And as an attendee of this session, you'll also be notified of any future events. We do have the 3rd session in our practice support series coming at the end of June. So that'll be Wednesday, the 25th of June. And we'll be joined with Susan Jones for a session on service excellence in an age of demand. So don't miss that one. We look forward to welcoming you again.
And I know Sue very, very well, and I could not recommend her highly. So do please go in. You won't be disappointed.
Right. So a couple of thank yous. So thank you from Heather. Thank you from Lucy. Thank you from Zoe, and just to answer Sarah's questions.
I can't
So
see anything.
Lucy's question, will the recording be sent out? Yes, so we'll update this to our YouTube platform over the next couple of days, and we'll share it as part of the thank you message at the end of the session as well. So thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you, Kieran, for being my a very able assistant that eased my stress levels greatly.
It's okay. I've just got a couple of notes from a Williams perspective. So we do still have a couple of minutes. So please pop your questions in the chat if you do have anything. So yeah, as one of the leading partners for healthcare professionals in primary care, we are dedicated to supporting your everyday, both from a service perspective and also through added value and education, as we've been able to deliver in partnership with Claire and the IHSCM today. So our offering spans across numerous medical services, along with thousands of products in our disposables, pharmaceutical and equipment categories. And we are very proud of our excellent rating on Trustpilot. Yeah, and just want to reiterate, following up from what Claire said, really, that we're here to support you and help you save some time and effort with our omni-channel shopping experience. So I do have one other thing as well. Just to remind you, you can earn rewards every time you shop with Williams Plus. This is our new reward scheme at Williams Medical. So you can find out more about eligibility and enroll by visiting wms.co.uk/Williams Plus. So we do have one more question from Michelle. So will the certificate be emailed? So we will issue some resources after the session, and yeah, everything will be covered within one email for you. So, okay, great. And then I was just thinking as well, Claire, I did have one question. So you obviously covered, there was lots of tips and lots of examples through the session. In terms of the resources, I don't know if there's any particular ones that you would recommend. Maybe we could include those as part of the email after as well.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. I can send some over to you. But to be completely honest with you, is that it's just personal choice. Some people like to listen to other people's experience, like meditation ones, or from BBC Sounds do an awful lot of like the meditation ones. But I can certainly send some over to you, Kieran. It's I'll send a cross section, so because some people like to hear other people's experiences. There's a podcast called How Do You Cope coming out at the moment, which is quite interesting. People talking about their own experiences with mental health and personal stress management, and some people just find that useful. Other people just want something that's quite meditative. So there's a variety of ones that I'm very happy to sort of send over.
Brilliant. And if someone wants to get in contact with you, Claire, what's the best method?
Absolutely, my email. I've put my email on the slide, so you'll get that. I don't mind if you want to just email me. I am on LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm very happy to do that, because sometimes a session like this, when I've just been talking at you for a long time, I'm very conscious of that. It'll probably be later on you think, oh, but I wonder about this or that. So absolutely, very happy to have a dialogue outside of here if that would be useful to anybody. Genuinely don't mind that at all.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm just double checking the chat. I don't think there are any other questions, which is a credit to the presentation that it was so informative. So, okay, so yeah, so just to bring the session to a close, then once again, thank you, Claire, and thank you all for joining us today. Yeah, as I said, we'll be following up with some resources over the coming days, and yeah, please don't hesitate to contact us if you need any support. So yeah, we look forward to seeing you all on more webinars, including this new practice support series throughout the year. So thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care. Thank you all.